Hi, how are you today? Sonia Lourdes speaking. Today I wanted to uh, talk to you about mild traumatic brain injury, which, uh, which is what my book is about. Well, sort of. The hypothesis of getting over the love hump 99 plus 1 ways. And I wrote it especially for people with mild traumatic brain injury, PTSD, uh, people affected by trauma, challenges, hardships. That's what this book is about. But for brain injury, mild traumatic brain injury, I wanted to sort of use an example. I'm going to use an example of a rose to sort of explain a little bit about the effects of mild traumatic brain injury, because a lot of people don't understand it. Usually, mild traumatic brain injury is something that you can't see, okay? Because, usually it's a closed head injury because, you may not see any gashes or, bumps on the person's head and things like that. So, for the average person, they don't understand it. So, I have my beautiful roses. Okay? Aren't they beautiful? I love roses. Yes. Okay. All right. So, it's always nice to take the time to smell the roses. Yes. Okay. So, now, we know that roses come from a rose bush. Now, usually with a mild traumatic brain injury, there is that moment of trauma, okay, and it can happen in various ways, okay, and sort of the trauma it's sort of like that shaken baby syndrome, okay? Because what happens if there's some point of impact that affects the brain, where inside the skull there are tiny points, and that brain hitting against that skull with a certain force can injure the brain. So now, with roses, okay, comes from the rose bush. You cut the rose from the rose bush, okay? And at first, the roses are still beautiful. You cut them off, they're blooming, they're beautiful, okay? And whatever you do, you might put them in water and you might add some type of additive to the water to make them last a little longer, okay? But the truth of the matter is that once you cut that rose from the rose bush, you know that eventually it's going to show signs of the fact that you cut it off from the rose bush, because the leaves will begin to dry up, and the rose will start to droop and things like that, right? And so it can be sort of the same way with a mild traumatic brain injury. Okay, there's a point of trauma, okay, to the brain, but the effects of that mild traumatic brain injury are not always immediately manifest. Sometimes with a mild traumatic brain injury, the effects or the fact that there has been an injury, it may manifest itself slowly, just like with a rose. It's beautiful, it's on the bush, you cut it off, The rose looks beautiful for a certain amount of time, but then after a while you begin to see the fact that it's been cut off from the rose bush, because the leaves will begin to die, they'll begin to droop, see, like that, okay? And so that's sometimes how it is with a mild traumatic brain injury. There are a lot of times, there may be certain clues that a person has sustained a mild traumatic brain injury. It could be that whatever the trauma was to the brain, it could have caused them to black out for a period of time, or they may have began to experience severe headaches after the trauma. Things like that, okay, can be a clue, okay? But of course, I believe that, if they do like an MRI or something on the brain, they can see it. But even then, whatever part of the brain was traumatized, the full effects of the trauma may not show itself right away, okay? But like I said, it's like that rose. It's cut from the rose bush. So with a brain injury, there's a point of trauma where something was affected, okay? The brain was affected. And wherever you get that rose from, okay, but wherever it is, and like I said, you can put the rose in water or whatever, and that might, make it stay looking beautiful for longer, okay? But the truth is that it's been cut off, and the rose will not eventually show the effects of being cut off from the rose bush, okay? It may not be immediate, but eventually it will, because you'll see the leaves start to fall and things like that. So that's just one aspect of, hopefully this example will help you to understand it just a little more than you did before you watched this video, okay? So thank you for watching, and pass it on. And don't forget to enjoy your roses. And wait, and I could have used any flower, but I chose rose.